All right, guys, back here on Southeastern 16 with episode 7 of the SEC Basketball Experience. Our first under the Southeastern 16 banner, Max. How about that? It's a crowning moment here for us. Here, yes, we are Southeastern 16 now. So be sure to update your bookmarks and everything like that if you have us bookmarked either on Twitter or on YouTube. But we are going to jump into episode 7, the experience here, and got a lot of fun stuff to talk about on this episode. We're going to start with look at some of the future odds and kind of give you an idea what Vegas thinks about the SEC heading into next season. Also going to talk to Ben McKee, who covers Tennessee for 247, and we're going to talk some post-Dalton Connect Vols basketball and kind of give our expectations on what you can expect from Tennessee this season. We're going to do our guess the starting lineup as usual. Arkansas fans, you're up. And we're going to tell you why this may actually be one of the easiest ones we've done, period, on Guess the Starting Lineup. We'll have our prediction, of course, and we're going to add in some coach quotes, Max. We're going to guess the coach quotes, see how good we are at knowing these guys and the way they talk. Before we do that, let's tell you about our friends at BetOnline, number one source for all your sports betting needs this season. Baseball, golf, soccer. They've got the top fights, UFC, MMA, boxing. It's all there. Every stat, matchup, live odds, spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head to an online casino, get on the game of blackjack or poker, plus over 150 slots. Games are there to play. All you got to do is head to the website today. Get in on the action. Use that promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. Bet online. The game starts here. All right, Max, as we said, Vegas knows all. And if we go to our friends at BetOnline, they've got some odds for the national championship next season. And it's kind of a decent indicator of what teams are expected to be. We've talked about bracketologies and all that kind of stuff. We did mention on a previous episode, Alabama was the betting favorite at one point recently to win it all heading into next season. Yes, even over defending national champion UConn. But, Max, give us the update. Where do things stand? What are you seeing with these future odds, which I think now have Alabama and UConn neck and neck as the favorite?
A wise man once said, Blake, you can never have too many futures in July. I don't know who that was, but very wise man.
I've heard that before. I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. It's making its rounds. So yeah, we have a two-way tie for the overall national champion favorite with Alabama and UConn at 8-1. Now it's going to vary based on which platform you use. We're looking at BetOnline here. So Alabama I'm going to go down through the SEC here real quick, just rattle them off. So Alabama's the favorite at 8-1 for the SEC. Number 2, Arkansas at 25-1. So pretty sizable gap, 8-1 to 25-1, 1-2. Then we have 2 teams tied for third. We have Kentucky and Auburn, both at 33-1. I kind of like Auburn there at 33-1. I don't think it's going to be that steep, come December, January. Yeah. Then Tennessee at 40-1. Not far behind them, Texas and Florida are tied at 50-1. Then so that's your top 7 there. That's your top half kind of. Texas A&M at 66-1 is 8. Mississippi State at 80-1 is 9. And then we get into the hundreds here. Missouri and Ole Miss 100-1. LSU, Oklahoma, and Georgia all 125-1. South Carolina 150-1. I feel like that's a little bit disrespectful. And then Vanderbilt 400-1. Can make a pretty penny if you cash in on Vandy this year. But yeah, that's the 16 teams in the SEC odds to win the national championship.
All right, let's start off at the bottom. I'm going to tell you the ones that I look at and I'm intrigued by. I mean, I don't think Vanderbilt's winning the national championship, but if you're telling me Vanderbilt is at 400-1 and a very, think about where DePaul has been at it as a program, right? I know they have a new coach in Chris Holtmann, but DePaul's at 500-1. So Vanderbilt is not that far ahead of DePaul. And I'm just I don't think so. I think it should be a little bit higher than that. Yeah. But you guys know, I picked Vanderbilt to make the tournament. So for that reason, I think 400-1 is just way, way down there. You mentioned the value in Father Lamont Paris in South Carolina. They'll be fun. They'll be okay with that. The disrespect card. Let's play it for South Carolina, right where we want them to be heading into next season. But the one that stood out to me, actually, I think there's 2. Texas A&M at 66-1. That's the one I'm looking at right now. Because
66
I'm
to 1.
thinking, I mean, again, I'm not, as we're saying, we're doing this in terms of like where we have teams slotted. And I just think A&M at that number, not bad to throw a little money down on maybe, because remember, they got Wade Taylor. We talked about it. I mean, Max, you said this could be Buzz Williams' best team he's ever had.
Don't tempt me on this one, Blake.
I'm just telling you, if you think this is the best team he's ever had, and they're at 66 to 1 right now, I'm going in on that one.
If you place $10 on Texas A&M, just a measly Jersey Mike's, Club Supreme sub there, $10 to win 660. That's a lot of Jersey Mike's.
Jersey Mike's, we're looking for sponsors. Reach out, caroline.smith@southeastern14.com if you would like Max Barr to eat your sub on air. But I think A&M's the one at the top of my list. I think that's too low, and I think it's only going to go up. I think that Florida's interesting at 50 to 1.
Yep. Walter Clay.
I think Auburn's too low. You said it. I think you said it best. For me, probably A&M and Auburn are the two most appealing to me right now because A&M's just too far back. Auburn feels too far back too, and it's also based on the expectation of why I don't know that Auburn will be any lower than this. And so if you're going to use that approach, now's the time on Auburn because I think they're only going to go up from 33 to 1. So those to me, as I look at these, which you said Tennessee's at 40 to 1 if you want to put them in that same conversation.
Yeah.
Arkansas at 25 to 1. I don't know.
I think that's a little ambitious.
I mean, listen, it's the Cal Revenge Tour. We're going to talk about the roster and the starting lineup in a minute, but I just don't know. I wonder. I feel like maybe that number bounces around a bit more than some of these others, and maybe kind of goes backward, comes back. Like it's hard to tell. But I think to me, if I had to play two right now, if I had to pick two, I'd go A&M 66 to 1, Auburn 33 to 1.
I like that. I'll wrap up with I think that those two tied for 6, Texas and Florida, they're both 50 to 1 right now. I don't know which one is going to click because both teams are real talented with some really good guard play. I'll tell you what, one of those two teams, Texas and Florida at 50 to 1, you're going to get one of them at a huge discount. Yeah. One of those teams is not going to be 50 to 1 come January.
I agree with you. I think both of them could be. I think it could be both. I mean, look, Missouri. Like I said, we're higher on Missouri maybe than some people too. And so if you're looking at that 100 to 1, you're like, why not throw down a 10 spot, give it a shot. So
there you go.
But again, you are talking about a team that didn't win an SEC game last year. So I don't know. LSU, Oklahoma, Georgia, all at the same 125 to 1. That kind of tells you. Without giving away our rankings, which, by the way, we are going to release our rankings next week.
They're coming.
Prepare accordingly. We're going to release our summer SEC basketball power rankings next week. But I think that Max probably not that far off from where we have those teams kind of pretty much bunched together, LSU, Oklahoma, Georgia.
Yeah, no real surprise there. I'm kind of surprised they've got South Carolina down there at 15 SEC. I mean, I know that there's a lot of question marks with this roster because there is a lot of change, especially in the backcourt. But you have Collin Murray-Boyles, who's going to be one of the best players in the league. 150 to 1 is just, that's steep.
Yeah, I didn't even mention that one because, I don't know. You're talking about a team's odds that are going to go up considerably. Like, where was South Carolina's odds at, in February last year? They weren't 150 to 1. I'll tell you that. So, if you're thinking this could be a repeat performance, then I will say, actually, they should be at the top of the list to say, now's the time to get them at 150 to 1. But, you're right. They're, spoiler alert, I mean, without giving it away too, I'm going to have South Carolina ahead of LSU, Oklahoma, Georgia in my rankings next week. So, the fact that they are behind by that margin, that's also a value spot for me. But
if you put $2.50 on South Carolina, it wins 375.
What if you put $25 on South Carolina?
25 wins $3,750.
All in. All in on Father Lamont Paris leading the way. What if you put $100 on the Gamecocks? I'm not a math whiz here, folks.
That would be it would be 15 grand.
Yeah. Okay. So there you go. But bet responsibly. But we're just letting you know there are some big winners out there potentially, depending on how that goes. If you're just curious, we talked about the SEC teams. You mentioned UConn, Alabama, the same odds. They're currently the co-favorites to this. Kansas is at 10-1, Duke's at 12-1, Houston 16-1, Gonzaga 18-1, Carolina, North Carolina that is, at 20-1, Baylor 25-1, and then that's where you get to Arkansas at also 25. So if you're just looking at some of these teams that are out there kind of hovering around, those are the spots for those, Max.
Yeah, I heard a few that were in Alabama's non-conference schedule that you just listed off, which is wild.
Yeah. But as always, the Tide will play a tough schedule. And, listen, if they lose a couple of those games, that could maybe be good. Get a little bit more better value on Alabama with these future odds, perhaps, for the Tide. But I don't know, Max. I don't see Alabama moving very much in these. I think they're going to be right there, probably among the top 5 favorites most of the season. But,
yeah, I'd agree.
All right. There you go. There's just an update on kind of what Vegas thinks about everything with SEC basketball heading into the season, how these teams could sort of shake out. So pick your value spot accordingly when it comes to trying to figure out who to get the most out of. As I said, I really like A&M and Auburn in those two spots there. But if you want to go bold, go South Carolina.
There you go.
Way too far down. They shouldn't be down that far with that. All right, we said we're going to talk to Ben McKee from 24/7 Sports about the Tennessee basketball program, state of the Vols, where are they at right now as we head into the new season. You guys know we just did a look at Tennessee's starting lineup recently and kind of gave you a reason why I think the stock is trending up for Tennessee heading into the season. And again, we get Ben's thoughts on that with where the Vols are at heading into the new campaign. So let's jump into our conversation with Ben McKee. All right, we do have Ben McKee on from GoVols247. You can check out his stuff there, and we'll let Ben plug everything in terms of his Vols coverage here before we wrap up. But Ben, we brought you on to talk some Tennessee basketball, and Max is laughing at me because I told him, he's like, what are you going to, what are some of the things you're going to talk about? I said, I got the first question is the one that's on my mind, on everybody's mind, so I'm asking it right off the bat, Ben. Can Chaz Lanier be Dalton Connect?
That's the $1 million question, right? Everybody is putting those expectations on him, which I think are certainly unfair. I would say no, just being on the more cautious side of things, and it's more out of respect for what Dalton accomplished, and again, just unfair expectations being placed on Chaz because. Do I think he's capable of winning SEC Player of the Year? Yes. Do I think he's capable of being a first-round draft pick? Yes. But to pencil that in prior to the season, more so with the SEC Player of the Year award, and Dalton also won the Julius Erving Award, which goes to the best small forward, and Chaz plays more of the 2 than the 3. But, I mean, he had an all-time historic season, and to again, as I continue to say, to place those expectations on Chaz are maybe a little unrealistic, even if he does have the potential to achieve those goals. So I guess my short answer would be yes, he is capable of being the next Dalton Connect, but I'm a little hesitant, as you can tell, just because what Dalton did last season was just phenomenal. His ability to score the basketball, the way he carried Tennessee at times. And I don't know that Tennessee is going to need Chaz Lanier to do that as much, because I think that they're going to be more versatile on offense, and I think that the offensive pie is going to be sliced up and divvied out, and more people are going to be able to chip in. And not to disrespect any of the guys that were on last year's team. I mean, Zakai Zeigler had his big games. Jonas Adu even had a game or 2 here and there throughout the regular season in which he carried the load offensively. It was a down year offensively for Santiago Vescovi, but he hit a shot, some big shots here and there, and really played well defensively. And then Josiah Jordan-James also had a couple of key moments as well. So short answer, yes, he's capable, but long answer, I think it's a little bit unfair to put those expectations on him.
Ben, I'm gonna ask you some nooks and crannies of the lineup, but first, we just had some staff movement, some assistant coaches, player development, I think. to just kind of walk me through, because I was scrolling through your page and I saw you did a story on it. Walk me through the new positions. How is this going to impact the squad? All that good stuff.
Yeah, it's now the second consecutive offseason that Tennessee is going to have zero movement with its coaching staff. Everybody is still intact outside of the promotions
Right.
and title bumps that you are alluding to. And as far as how it affects the squad, I mean, how is that not a great thing to have cohesion in place from one year to the next and zero turnover? Rick Barnes already cultivates an awesome culture as is, but to have the same pieces in place, that should only allow this team to really pick off where it left off from a season ago in terms of leadership. And I mean, you have guys like Zakai, Zeigler, and Jahmai Mashack, who good luck finding better leaders than those two guys in the entire sport. But just from top to bottom, the leadership and the culture remains intact. But the gist of it is like Lucas Campbell, who was a walk-on for Tennessee about a decade ago. I believe his freshman season was Rick's first season at Tennessee. So he's been with Rick for a while now. He did have a stop after his playing days at ETSU as the director of basketball operations, but then came back and has essentially been the recruiting coordinator. I believe his official title was director of recruiting. And the NCAA, I guess it was last July, they implemented a rule to where you can have 5 assistant coaches. 3 of them are the traditional full-time assistants, but you can also give somebody else, 2 other people, the title of assistant coaches. And Lucas Campbell, because he's been with Tennessee and Rick for so long, was a walk-on. That's kind of the headliner of yesterday's news, but he gets a title bump to assistant coach, and he does do a lot behind the scenes. He does. Everybody in that program adores Lucas. And then Brian Lentz is somebody who has been with Rick for quite some time as well, both at Texas and now at Tennessee. He gets bumped up to an assistant coach role. I believe he was the assistant director of basketball operations or one of those titles. There's so many nowadays in football and basketball and all the different sports. And then Riley Collins was a graduate assistant who came over here recently. This will be his 3rd season with Tennessee, and he's getting bumped up from that graduate assistant role to director of basketball personnel, recruiting personnel, something along those lines. So another support staff member that puts in a lot of work and doesn't get enough credit because he's not as known because he's behind the scenes, but with his title bump, his hard work is being paid off.
You know, you mentioned Mashack, and I know this will go into something that Max will talk about with the lineup and such probably, but how does his role change on this particular team? Because, like, he is someone who hasn't had to do a lot offensively. He has been kind of that defensive specialist, and certainly the pairing of him and Zeigler, that's going to give Tennessee, once again, a very elite, I would think, defensive team. But do you see his role changing significantly on this team? Like, do you feel like there's going to be higher expectations for what he needs to bring offensively? Because I'm sure we'll talk about it. They brought in some pretty good players offensively that will be just fine in helping them make up that scoring load for Connect. But do you see Mashack's role changing all that much on this team, or how do you kind of see that playing out?
I don't see his role changing in terms of what it looks like. I think the volume changes. The volume of his role changes. And something else that you mentioned, I think his expectations are changing as well, to where he is absolutely going to be looked at as one of the guys who is expected to lead the way just from a simple leadership standpoint and just continue to do what he does defensively. I mean, he's already one of the best, if not the best, on-ball defender in the entire country. So just continuing to thrive in that role. But I also think he's going to be expected to do more offensively. Is he going to be the number 1 option? No. Is he going to be a top 3, top 4 option? Probably not. But he is capable of more offensively than he has shown up until this point. He just needs to settle in, I think, a little bit more offensively and find some confidence. And again, he's not going to be Dalton Connect as a scorer, but he is capable of knocking down shots from the perimeter. He's a very physical basketball player. He is capable of driving and getting to the rim and finishing. He's just a heck of an athlete, and there's no reason for him to throw up some zeros on his offensive box score. So I think his role is going to remain the same in terms of that leadership role and leading the way for the team and then doing what he's done defensively. But they do want more from him offensively, and I do think he's capable of giving them more offensively. And if he is able to give them more offensively consistently, then man, it's hard not to think about how good this basketball team can be, given what you mentioned that Tennessee brought in several scorers this offseason.
Speaking of role changes, this is probably the most excited question I have out of every interview we've done. This is episode 7. This is my most excited question. Talk to me about Cam Carr. Talk to me about that's all I'm going to say. Just talk to me about Cam Carr.
Fair enough. It is the basketball question that I've gotten the most this offseason. Is this the year for Cam Carr? And I say that as if he's been at Tennessee for 4 or 5 years now, but it's just his second offseason. Cam Carr is, man, he's got all the potential in the world. And I know that's essentially why you are asking me that question. And there's a lot of buzz that he's generated for himself this offseason with some camps. And you just look at him and he has that prototypical basketball body type that if it fills out and if it clicks for him, like he's going to be a problem with his athleticism and his length paired with that athleticism. And he's got some stuff to him. He's got an edge to him to where like he will talk to you. And Tennessee is very excited about Cam Carr. I mean, even this time last year, you were hearing raving reviews about Cam Carr and just what he is doing. And it didn't click for him during the season. I would chalk that up to, being a freshman, but also so many veterans in front of him and not a lot of opportunities for playing time. And it's hard to settle in and find a nice groove and have an impact when there are so many veterans in front of you and you're not playing consistently. But in the preseason, like I was told like he's giving buckets. And it wasn't buckets to like his fellow freshmen. It was like giving buckets to the veterans and the key players on the team. So he is somebody that truly, you hear it all the time, but his potential is sky high, absolutely sky high. He has no ceiling. Although MJ would say that the ceiling is the roof, Cam Carr has no ceiling, and they're looking for him to take a big step forward this year. I am fascinated. I do say all that to wonder how big of an impact he has this year, just because there are several veterans still in front of him. He's more that 2 to 3 on the floor. You have Chaz, Lanier, you have Jahmai Mashack, you have Jordan Gainey, who's an older player as well that they will trust on both ends of the floor. Zakai Zeigler is going to play 40 minutes at point guard, and not that Cam's a point guard, but just another guard or wing in his way. Darlinstone, Dubar, who transferred in from Hofstra. A lot of veterans. I mean, 4 or 5 right there that I just rattled off in front of Cam. So I'm curious to see what his playing time looks like. Does he have the potential to where if it clicks for him this year, he's capable of surpassing a Jordan Gainey, a Darlinstone, Dubar? I think so. And I think even if like Jahmai doesn't show offensively what I got done talking about, Jahmai is going to play a lot. Don't get me wrong, especially what he provides defensively. And like he was loyal, stuck with the program this offseason. He's going to be rewarded for that. But Cam could creep up on Jahmai's minutes as well if it clicks for him the way a lot of people think that it will at some point. And if Jahmai doesn't take that step offensively, that I do think Jahmai will take. But I almost envision, like, do I think it's possible that he could surpass some guys, older guys on the depth chart? Yes. But I think the more likely scenario is that maybe he's that first guy off the bench and still one of the better players in the SEC and could absolutely go out there and win that SEC Sixth Man of the Year award. And again, kind of talking about what I did with Jahmai and what is this team going to look like if it clicks offensively for Jahmai? What is this team going to look like if it clicks for Cam Carr? And he is kind of that SEC Sixth Man of the Year role type for this team. So although there are a lot of veterans in front of him, he's capable of it clicking this year. That everybody in that program loves him, thinks the world of him, thinks that he's going to take a major jump at some point. And he has the potential, even this year with veterans in front of him, for it to click and be a first round of the draft type of guy this time next year.
We already talked about Chaz Lanier, and we've talked a lot about the guards. But if I gave you of these 3 guys, Dubar, Igor Milicic, Felix Okpara, which guy is the biggest X factor for Tennessee's success? Which of those guys you feel like, if we're looking up at the end of the season saying things went great or there was a missing piece, it's one of these guys? Like who is the guy of that group you feel like is the biggest X factor, the biggest guy that could have the impact on Tennessee, again, being a team that can win the SEC or potentially not win the SEC.
Yeah, I think the best player out of those three is Igor Milicic Jr., the Charlotte transfer. He is not Grant Williams at the 4, but he is going to be the most versatile offensive 4 that Tennessee has had under Rick Barnes. Not saying that he's going to go win SEC Player of the Year like Grant did twice, back-to-back years, or drop 40 a game or anything like that. But I think people outside of Knoxville are really sleeping on that addition for Tennessee because he can truly do it all offensively from the 4, and Tennessee is really excited about that. I say that to say that Felix Okpara is the X factor that could determine how successful of a season Tennessee has, because I already talked about, the several bodies that are on the perimeter at the wing. They don't have a backup true point guard, which could be concerning, especially if Zakai goes down. At that point, you're asking somebody who is more of a 2 or a 3 to be a primary ball handler. They did bring in Bishop Boswell, a freshman, but he's more of an off the ball guard than on the ball. So that isn't a question mark, that the backup point guard situation, if you were to lose Zakai, because like I said earlier, Zakai is going to play 35 to 40 minutes a game. So that is a question mark. But the other question mark is, and probably the bigger question mark, because you don't have a Zakai Zeigler at center. I like Felix Okpara, but he's not what Zakai is at his respective position. But he is somebody that Tennessee feels like they can get more out of offensively than he's shown in the past. Because speaking of Zakai, Felix Okpara has never played with a point guard like Zakai, and Zakai has never had a true lob threat like Felix Okpara. I mean, Felix Okpara's athleticism is through the roof. Is he going to be a Grant Williams where you put him on the block and you throw it to him and just possession after possession he goes and gets you a bucket? No, absolutely not. But there are some aspects in the pick and roll game with his athleticism, with Zakai's ability as a point guard to really feast there. And then there's some things that Felix does really well that fits in perfectly with what Tennessee likes to do in transition as well, because of his athleticism to run rim from rim to rim. And I think that Tennessee really likes the potential there to have an impact on the game. And they do think, I mentioned that he's kind of not that guy that you put on the block and you throw it to him every single possession and he gets you a bucket. But they do feel like there's more in his offensive bag than he has shown to this point. But to me, the biggest thing that Felix provides is his rim protection. I mean, he was one of the best rim protectors in the country last year. And Tennessee, with Jonas Adu is a very talented basketball player. He was an all-SEC performer, but when it mattered most, he did not show up, particularly in the NCAA tournament against bigger, more physical big men. He struggled in those games. So Felix Okpara, he's not Uroš Plavšič in terms of physicality, but his length and athleticism and his motor, I think that's going to allow Tennessee to take a step forward at the rim and protect the rim better. And to answer your question, I think it's Felix Okpara being that X factor because there's just not other options at that position. You do have JP Estrella, who is your backup 5. And I think Tennessee really likes JP Estrella. He's just still developing. And I think he's going to play and be a contributor. But if you're not getting anything out of that 5 position, and I think it's up to Felix Okpara to make sure Tennessee gets something out of that 5 position, then I think that's the thing that maybe we look back on and saying, okay, if they had that, then maybe they are able to finally get over the hump and make it to the Final Four. But you mentioned him as the X factor. I can see a scenario. I think it's more likely that he is the X factor that helps Tennessee get over the hump than it is we look back on the season and think, man, Tennessee was really missing a solid piece there.
Blake, I just got one more here. We mentioned Darlinstone Dubar. So when you look at the 1 through 3, Zeigler, of course, under 6 foot, and then I think Carr or Mashack at 6'4" and 6'5", and also Lanier and Boswell 6'4", 6'5"-ish. And then you jump up to Dubar at 6'8". You don't have anyone in that like 6'6", 6'7" range. And I know Mashack, the guy can guard a center if he wanted to. But Do you think that we might see a little bit of Dubar at the 3 at all, or anything like that with a big lineup? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think you absolutely could. I think that you could see D Stone as they call him at the 3 or the 4. That was something that I remember being told to me that Tennessee liked about his game when they were pursuing him in the portal is his position versatility, both offensively and defensively. So I think that there's absolutely a scenario in which in a bigger lineup he is playing the 3. If they want to go smaller. He could be the 4. They wanted to find somebody that could play the role of Josiah Jordan James, which is what we are talking about. That tweener who isn't. You don't know if he's a 3, you don't know if he's a 4, but he's capable of playing both and playing both at a pretty high level. There will be a drop off defensively just because Josiah was so good defensively, and not that Dubar doesn't have the natural skill set to be as good defensively as Josiah. But Josiah was in a rigorous defensive system under Barnes for so long that it was second nature to him. He was another coach out there on the floor, whereas Dubar is going to be playing catch up and learning on the fly in just one season. So the same athleticism and skill set is there defensively, but the IQ won't be there right away. And no disrespect to Dubar, but he's not Josiah Jordan James. Like Josiah Jordan James' IQ is some of the best IQ I've ever seen at the college level, especially under Rick at Tennessee. So you do have some drop off defensively, but I think you gain something offensively as well. Josiah is a capable shooter. I think Darlinstone will be a more consistent shooter than Josiah was. So you lose some defensively, but I think you gain some offensively. But that was probably their number one objective in the portal this year was to fill somebody or to add somebody that can play that Josiah Jordan James versatility role of being able to play the 3 and the 4, maybe even the 5 in a super small lineup. And Darlinstone Dubar was their guy that they feel like can kind of play that Josiah Jordan James role of being able to play the 3 and the 4.
All right, we'll wrap up with this, Ben. If you had to right now, let's fast forward. We're in March. We're doing a team capsule on Tennessee. We're looking back and what went right, what went wrong. What do you think as of right now, as the roster stands on paper, what will be the biggest strength of this team? What could be the biggest weakness of this team or the potential thing that, again, could hold them back?
No injuries, too.
No injuries. Well, I'm glad you said that because that's exactly where I was going. Because I talked about the depth at point guard, true point guard. You only have Zakai. Right. And then a little bit of questions about your post depth as well. You have bodies down there. I think Igor Milicic is going to have a great season. I think Felix Okpara is going to have a great season as well. And then after those two, you need JP Estrella, you need Cade Phillips to really take a step forward. And JP looked really good in that Purdue game, battling with Zach Edey at times. And I mean, he picked Tennessee over Iowa and Duke and was a big time recruit coming out, was a borderline 5-star, if I remember correctly. So he obviously has talent. And I do think he'll take a step forward this year. Cade Phillips can maybe be that energy guy off the bench. I don't know that he's ever in your starting 5, but there's no reason he can't be your second or third guy off the bench that just comes in and grabs rebounds and hustles and plays hard. And it's just that annoying post player that comes off the bench that teams don't like to deal with. So I guess my concerns would be the depth at those two positions. I know you said no injuries, but if something were to happen to Zakai, he's torn his ACL once. I don't think he's injury prone or anything like that, but just the depth at those two positions would be my biggest concern because I think they did a good job of checking every box of we can play this way, we can play that way. They can play in a lot of different ways. I think they'll be able to slow it down. I think they'll be able to get out and transition and play well. I think they're going to be a very versatile basketball team. I think the strength is going to be their offensive game. They have so much offensive potential, so much shooting. I think that they are going to be a top 10, top 15 offense in the country. And maybe I'm being conservative there when it's all said and done. It'll be interesting. I don't think that this is a huge concern when you look at the season as a whole, because I think it'll be perfectly fine by the time the tournament rolls around, which is all that matters. But the offense is going to be ahead of the defense. to start the season, which is going to be weird to see under Rick Barnes.
Yeah.
But they just, I mean, Josiah Jordan-James, Santiago Vescovi, people can say what they want about their offensive game, but defensively, they were so critical for Tennessee having one of the best defenses in the country last year. I talked about the IQ with Josiah, and it was exactly that. They were tenacious. They covered up a lot of mistakes from their teammates if they got blown by or just whatever. And Santi was the same way in terms of just being just a lot of IQ and knowing where to be and being tenacious on the perimeter. So you have a lot of new pieces, and Rick obviously has a high defensive standard. How long will it take for them to mesh together defensively? I think when it's all said and done and when it matters most, they'll be perfectly fine defensively. So, I mean, I don't really see a lot of flaws on paper right now. I really don't, because I think you look at offense, defense, I think you see a top 10, top 15 potential on each side of the basketball, and hard to point out a lot of flaws on paper right now. I'm sure we'll get into the season and we'll find one, but the depth at point guard and the depth in the post, those are kind of my two biggest question marks going into the season.
Ben, great stuff. Let everybody know we can find all of your work over at GoVols247, because again, it's going to be an exciting, I think, basketball season. And really, I mean, I'm sure you just covered a baseball national championship, football, high expectations, basketball, high expectations. Good time to be a Tennessee fan right now.
Yeah, good time to be covering them as well. It is, I guess it's good and bad. There's no such thing as vacation anymore.
Right.
Tony Vitello has just completely taken my summers away from me, which I'm fine with. Baseball is my favorite sport, and they are super entertaining to cover it, as a lot of people know. But people can find me at GoVols247. Coverage of everything Tennessee that you could want is over there, and you can follow me on Twitter, X, whatever it's called nowadays, at Ben McKee 14.
All right, a great conversation with Ben, and as you heard, I mean, Tennessee, as we mentioned, a very, very intriguing team heading into this season, seeing how things look offensively without Dalton Connect. And the defense will be there, but also that rotation. What does it look like for the Vols? We will find out for Rick Barnes' team heading into the season. All right, Max, that time again. Trivia, our favorite time of year. What you got for me?
First, I just want to say Blake and I were very, very excited for that interview with Ben. We were texting on the side. This is going to be a good one. Okay, trivia.
Bring it on.
Here we go. In 2020/2021, so this was the season where it was like not a lot of fans. It was like the, tail end of COVID season. The top 5 scorers in the SEC went as such. Number 5 was A.J. Lawson with South Carolina, 16.6 points a game. Number 4 was Iverson Molinar, 16.7 points a game with Mississippi State. Number 3 was Moses Moody, 16.8 points a game at Arkansas. Number 2 was Scottie Pippen Jr. with 20.8 at Vandy. And then who was number 1 with 23 points per game?
Okay, so this is 2021 is when okay, so we finished in 2021, so that means this guy would have been, all right, so the best team that year was Alabama.
This guy was a high volume, very high volume.
Yeah, there was no one on Alabama in the top 5, right? Or did I miss that?
No one on Alabama in the top 5.
So I think that's because they probably, as Petty and
that was the Petty Herb Jones,
Shackelford. Yeah, so okay, so they may have split those duties. Who else was good that year? I'm trying to remember. I feel like that was because I feel like wasn't that a year too where people played a different amount of games? So
yeah,
you can immediately eliminate A&M, because I remember A&M did not play a lot of games that year.
Yep.
I want to say South Carolina didn't play a lot of games either. So but Lawson was on there, so that's interesting. But wait a minute, now that I think about it, I'm like, that doesn't really matter because it's still going to factor into the scoring average.
It's a big jump too, because number 2 with Scottie Pippen is at 20.8, and then number 1 is 23.
I would have thought Pippen would actually be the top spot, but
Pippen was, I believe, the following year.
Okay, so
in 21-22, Pippen was the number 1.
Wait a minute. There was one year. I always wanted to call him by the wrong name, but I think I always want to call him Mitchell, but it was no. It was Cam Thomas. Had to be.
Bang!
Yeah. I always want to know why. And I know I did this too. I used to be like, hey, Cam Mitchell. I don't know why I call this guy Cam Mitchell. Like, it's Cam Thomas. And so in my head, I could never, but I was like, wait a second. You said volume, and I was like thinking of volume. I'm like, okay. Didn't necessarily have to be a bad team, but as a guy who, Cam, yeah, it's Cam, easily.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
Because he was, I
loved
ridiculous.
watching him. He was fun.
Let me pull this up here. So my goodness, I can only imagine like some of the outputs he had. Because Watford was on that team. Javante Smart. Yeah, okay. That was the team I was trying to think of. So that was kind of the team after. What was that? It was kind of the team after the teams before that, they had like Tremont Waters and all that. But yeah,
like the last of the Will Wade LSU ran.
Yeah, like I'm looking at some of these games here because something else about Thomas too, and why it makes sense is he rarely came off the floor. So he played just ridiculous number. And here's what I like about it too: we always like our Ken Palm comparisons. So that one season, only plays one season at LSU, which we all knew would happen. It'd just be one.
Yeah.
The comparisons: Malik Monk, Jamal Murray.
Oh my!
Nuts. Tyrese Maxey. Yeah, like keep going down the list here. Like, yeah, that's quite an interesting comparison. But he had just a remarkable year. So I distinctly remember, watching that. What game was it? I think it was the Bonnies game. I think. Oh yeah, LSU. Yep, played the Bonnies. Yep.
I remember watching that Bonnies game. Yep.
Yeah.
Cam Thomas.
That was. It was a contrast in styles.
Yeah.
I feel like with that game. Bonaventure wanted to play really slow. LSU wanted to get that thing up and down. And so LSU won out, of course, more scoring. Cam Thomas. There you go. That's a good one. I like that one. I was trying to think, but that was just kind of that year where I don't remember much of anything. And so, you don't remember a whole lot, but he was certainly a stud there. All right. I'm going to give you one. I'm not going to go who they play for this week. I'm going to give you another one, because I found this interesting. And it's kind of somewhat close in proximity to the time frame you just gave me. 2 of the top 3 players in SEC history, so 2 of the top 3 in field goal percentage for a career, okay? They both happen to finish their SEC careers in 2019. These are 2 of the top 3 in the history of the league. Minimum 500 shot attempts.
Oof.
2 guys finished their career in 2019, and they were among the top 3. Number 1 and number 3. The number 2 guy, Dwayne Davis at Florida, 1987 to 91. He averaged 64.1%. But the number 1 guy finished his career in 2019, 66.1% field goal percentage for his career. 400 makes on 605 attempts. Number 3, 63.5%. 378 makes on 595 attempts.
2018-2019 was when they finished their career?
Yeah, so 2019 was their last season. So now I'm not saying they started at the same time necessarily, but they both finished their SEC careers in 2019.
Okay,
Even if you just name the teams, I could give you, but it's going to be difficult.
Big men.
Yes.
Was there a Kentucky big man?
No.
Okay, so it's not PJ Washington.
Think about guys whose sole purpose is to destroy the rim. Like, these were guys that did not take. I'm trying to think. If you had to ask me what their shot looked like, I don't know, because I don't remember them doing a whole lot of anything outside of just dunking the ball, getting offensive rebounds. Now, I'm not knocking these guys. But it proves the point, right? Like, there were not a lot of jump shots here between these 2.
Okay. I want to see what were the standings like.
Yeah, you can look at the standings. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah. Okay, so. Oh.
A lot of good teams that year.
Yeah, there was a lot of good teams that year.
But what you're going to find interesting, without giving it away, is that these guys actually didn't play for great teams. So.
Okay.
I'll narrow it down for you. They didn't
Okay,
actually play
that
for
helps.
great teams.
It's got to be a big man, maybe like an A&M big man.
There is someone we've had on this show before that is going to get very angry with you if you do not get this one choice.
Oh, good Lord. All right, well, I'll go with an NBA guy that I know is super efficient. Is it Gafford?
Yes, you are correct. So Daniel
Okay, 'cause
Gafford,
didn't
Arkansas
Gafford
is
had
one
like
of
that
them.
NBA streak this year where he went
Mhm.
like, I don't know how many games without missing a shot.
So Gafford was number 3, 63.5%, made 378 of 595 attempts, played, 2017 to 19 for Arkansas. So, yes, he is one. And, again, he was just a dunking machine, so it's not that surprising. A lot of layups, a lot of dunks. But he was third on this list behind Dwayne Davis and the number 1 guy.
Who is this number 1 guy? Was it that was it that Georgia big man that you gave me in that
No, it wasn't
trivia
Derek
the other
Ogbede. No, not knocking Derek Ogbede, but no, it wasn't him.
Was it his partner Claxton?
No.
All right, I'm drawing a blank.
All right. So, number 1 on the list of career field goal percentage in the SEC, minimum 500 attempts, Dante Hall, Alabama.
Oh!
Jordan Harper is hearing this, and he is texting you as he listens to this, trying to figure out how you did not get this correct.
Him and Galen Smith.
Not to be confused with Jalen Smith. So, yes. Dante Hall holds the all-time percentage, record in the SEC, 66.1%, 400 makes on 605 attempts. There you go.
Oh, geez, I'm looking at his career now, and it was his sophomore, junior, and senior year. He was top 4 in the league in field goal percentage.
Yeah, I mean, the guy again, he didn't have to be the offensive wizard on those teams.
Petty.
Yeah, like he just had to be around the rim and make shots. Like if you look back, it's pretty remarkable. Like just some of the stat lines for him. 8 of 10, 8 of 10, 7 of 8, 5 of 7, 5 of 5. Like just keep going down the list. And very efficient for what they needed him to be. So there you go. Dante Hall, Daniel Gafford, 2 of your top 3 all-timers who finished their SEC career in 2019. All right, Max,
I like that one.
Yeah, it was a good one, wasn't it? I like digging into the SEC record book every now and then to find some weird stats that we don't always talk about. But I might give you another one next week that's interesting. All right, let's get to guess the starting lineup with Arkansas.
Yes.
I teased it earlier. I think this would be one of the easiest and quickest exercises we've done. We try to give Arkansas, we've given Arkansas a lot of attention this offseason. We all know that. But I just do not think this is difficult at all. I think this is a very simple guess the starting lineup because, in my opinion, as always, we start with the guarantees, right? Johnell Davis is going to start.
Yep.
He is going to start. He's in the lineup. Jonas Adu is going to start. He's in the lineup. I think DJ Wagner is going to start from the beginning, so he's in the lineup. I know people have gone back and forth about this, but I think Trevin Brazil starts. I don't think there's much of a question there. If he's good to go, I think he starts. Then I think that next spot is where you can have a debate, right?
Yep.
Whether it's Carter Knox, we talked about Billy Richmond, Thiero, do you kind of play around with that idea? So to me, Max, that's where this discussion probably is had, even though I've seen some people say that Thiero starts over Brazil and maybe it's Carter Knox or Billy Richmond in the 3 spot. But I think if Brazil's there, he's starting. That's just my guess. But
yeah, so how I kind of tackled this is I kind of started with a starting 5 and then worked off of that. My original starting 5 and what I have right now is DJ Wagner, Johnell Davis, Carter Knox, Trevin Brazil, and Jonas Adu. Now, if you take that as a base, you want to switch it up a little bit. Maybe we want a little bit more playmaking, a little bit more shot creation. Maybe you take Carter Knox out, slide Johnell Davis and DJ Wagner down, and put in Boogie Fland. So now it would be a Fland, Wagner, Johnell Davis, and then your 2 big men. That's if you want a little bit more shot creation, you can go with that alternative. And then if you want to go a little bit bigger, more defense, more physicality, take Carter, Knox out, put Thiero in at the 3. You lose a little bit of shooting, a little bit of spacing. You beef up the rebounding and defense. I think it's as simple as that, Blake. You got kind of those few options. I can see the debate between Thiero and Brazil at the 4, warranted. But yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward here, Blake.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot to add. Like, I think this is, I mean, really, if we look at every single team, this is pretty much up there in terms of what feels like the easiest, like, guesses. Like, I think this is probably one of the easiest ones to make because, 2, it helps that they don't have a lot of players. Like, it's not like, you know, they don't have 15 players on the roster. So you can kind of narrow it down a little bit and see what the roles are going to be for some of these guys. So, yeah, I'm with you. Like, I think you talk about, like, there's just a couple options. I feel like that's it. Like, this isn't a team where I think you've got, like, 4 options. I think it's probably one of 2 options. And you kind of spelled it out.
Who are we locking in?
I would probably go Wagner, Davis, Knox, Brazil, AD.
Boom. I like it, too.
Thiero is the first person off the bench.
Yep.
And, look, Boogie Fland can make his way into there. I mean, if you wanted to, I don't know, could you go a Fland, Wagner, Davis, take Knox out, maybe go Brazil? Possibly. But I think that's probably the best lineup. Just from the get-go, I think that's the most impactful lineup. So
I'm going to tease here. My bold prediction at the end of the show relates back to this segment here. Yeah,
that gives everyone a reason to keep listening now, doesn't it? But what should also keep you listening is this next thing we're going to do, which is I think the first time we've done this, isn't it, Max?
Yes.
On the show. Who said that? We're going to pick a quote from an SEC basketball coach at some point. It could be current, past, future. Although if we're predicting future quotes, then we really are the SEC basketball experience. But we have to pick a quote from a coach, and we have to try to guess who is that from. So, Max, would you like me to go first? How about I'll give you the quote first, since you have to go first on the other one. So, I'm going to give you this quote from an SEC coach, and you tell me who it is. He's talking about a player, and hey, if you guess both, then you get bonus points. But for now, you just try to guess which coach we're talking about. All right, quote. I've talked about his ceiling last year. I still believe his ceiling is incredibly high, and he's still not that close to it. He can be a good player and not be that close to it. But the challenge will be, can he become a phenomenal player as he continues to get closer to his ceiling?
What was that word salad?
A lot about ceilings, Max. But I did this one for you, so I realize it's not like the most controversial quote or anything, but I did this one for you. So
a name instantly comes to my head for a coach that would say something like that. I've got to go Buzz Williams.
No.
Darn
it's
it.
Funny that you think that. You're like, who is a guy that would just put this out there in this way? And you're like, Buzz Williams.
Well, because I watch during the season, I watch a good amount of the press conferences, and I love watching the A&M press conferences because Buzz will get a question asked, and the next reporter doesn't get to ask a question for another 5 minutes. So I was like, it's got to be Buzz, but it's not Buzz. Right.
It's not Buzz. So I'll quickly maybe I can read it a better way. So I've talked about his ceiling last year. I still believe his ceiling is incredibly high, and he's still not that close to it. He can be a good player and not be that close to it. But the challenge will be, can he become a phenomenal player as he continues to get closer to his ceiling? Do you understand now, Max?
We're just talking about ceilings and getting close to it.
All right. So here's the reveal. The reveal is that this is Father Lamont Paris, who is talking about the one and only Collin Murray-Boyles. In his ceiling.
Way.
So the full quote, just for the record, I did leave a sentence off at the beginning because it started with, even though Collin made the all-freshman team last season, it's no secret. And then it goes into the other part of the quote that I read to you. But I couldn't read that because you would know who that is. So, Yes, it's Lamont Paris from, let's see when this was. Actually, I mean, really, I honestly think this was like 2 days ago. Talking about Collin Murray-Boyles and just kind of the trajectory of his, growth as a player. So,
well, now that you explain that, it makes perfect sense. Now I totally get it.
Talking about ceilings. So, there you go. All right, you're 0 for 1 here. My turn.
Yep. Okay, I'll give you the exact date I'll give you an exact date
wow.
of when this was said. Yep. Well, not exact. This was March of 2021. I'm not going to give you the day.
All right.
March of 2021. Okay. It's quick and short here. Ready? I'm exhausted. I really just want to take a nap.
A coach said this.
I'm exhausted. I really just want to take a nap.
Now you got to give me a little context. Is this like after a game? Is this during like a midweek practice?
This is directly after a game in the post-game press conference. March of 2021. I'm exhausted. I really just want to take a nap.
All right. So to me, if we're trying to process of elimination, so you would assume this was a long game, perhaps.
Yep. Big game too.
Big game, long game. Who's a team that's played some overtime games? I feel like Alabama's had some overtime games. But I don't know that Nate Oats would say he wants to take a nap. Doesn't cross me as the kind of guy who takes naps.
It wasn't overtime.
Oh, it wasn't overtime. Okay.
It was just a real big game. March. It's like early to mid-March.
Was it a tournament game or a regular season game?
It was not regular season. So it was a tournament, but I'm not going to say if it was March or SEC.
Yeah, okay. Gotcha. All right. I'm tired. I just want to take a nap. We've all been there before. All right, so
long season.
So here's what I need to do first, though. Okay, I'm not going to cheat, but I need to kind of have an idea of who was coaching in the league in 2021. Okay. So I'm going to look at the standings only. I'm not looking at any individual teams, games, or anything like that. So fine. Oats, Musselman, Will Wade. I'm going straight down the standings. Rick Barnes, Mike White. Oh, who was Kermit? Conzo's still there. Yep, Conzo. Calipari. Ben Howland. Yep, Ben Howland. Bruce Pearl. Tom Crean. Maybe Tom Crean. Frank Martin. Buzz Stack. Okay. All right, so if we're saying it was... So, hold on. Did we confirm this was a tournament game or was not a tournament game?
It was a tournament game.
But we don't have to specify which tournament it was.
Yep.
All right, that's fair. That narrows it down. So that tells me the team had to actually be in a tournament game. Although, it could have been an SEC tournament. It could have been anybody. I'm going to go with... I'm going to give you one of two choices here, okay? And I'm just gonna throw two names out here.
Okay.
I'm gonna say one of them would be Tom Crean. I'm gonna say the other one would be I'm gonna go Tom Crean or Eric Musselman.
So you were actually right with your very first idea. It was Nate Oats.
Was it Nate Oats? Oh, yep. My. Wow. Okay.
So it was Nate Oats on Sunday, March 14th, after they beat LSU by 1 point in the SEC championship game. It was their third game in 3 days. They played Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then had to get ready to go to Indianapolis for March Madness. Nate Oats was spent, and he really just wanted to take a nap.
Nate Oats, noted napper. Now we know. There you go. All right. Well, you learn something new every day.
Your first idea was on it.
Always go with your gut, you know? So, I don't know. To me, it just felt like a Crean thing. Like, the guys just exhausted after just getting, Georgia was not bad that year, but I feel like, the toll of, I don't know. So, but then you said tournament. I'm like, well, they certainly were in the NCAA tournament. I don't know if they were in the NIT or not that year, but oh well. All right. Nate Oats is your winner there on that one. All right, Max, we wrap up with our one bowl prediction. You go first.
All right, I had said that mine tied back to the Arkansas lineup. Now, we just gave our lineup for what they're going to start the season with, what we think the starting lineup will be. Well, as you go along a season, you learn a little bit more about what works, what doesn't work. And there's one guy on this team that I think just is so important, it's going to be impossible to not start him when it starts to get real rough and physical in the SEC. So my bold prediction this year, Blake, for Arkansas is that come SEC play, Adu Thiero will be a starter. Now, I say that because when I looked into it a little bit, I was trying to battle between Brazil and Thiero because I kind of broke down the Milicic, Dubar, Tennessee debate also at the 4. Thiero started 19 of 25 games last year for Kentucky. Like, he was so important for that team with all that talent. Calipari had to have him on the floor a lot for his toughness, rebounding, defense. So I don't know exactly how it's going to shake out with this team, with the shooting and everything, but just something in my gut tells me when the games really start picking up, they're going to need this man Adu Thiero on the court.
All right. I like that. I'm a fan. Okay, so I'll just tell you, I never do this, okay? I always say when people start picking their Final Four picks and all this other stuff, right? I'm like, I can't possibly pick a Final Four without a bracket. I can't. Like, I can't give you my Final Four picks in July for a tournament that's played in March that I don't know the bracket for yet. So I'm going to break one of my rules here on this. But it's because this is a team and roster that is starting to grow on me, Max. And I don't know if we're in the same position on this team, but they recently made a very key addition to their roster. And the more I look at their potential starting lineup, which we haven't got to yet, we'll get to it at some point soon, the more I'm sold on this team making a triumphant entrance into the SEC. And I'm talking about Texas. Because I am going to tell you, I'm just going to, again, we're having fun with these.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and say it right now, okay? I think Texas makes the Sweet 16, or beyond, potentially. I think this team is that good on paper right now. And so I know this is one that, look, it's just you're making the Sweet 16. Who knows? But I couldn't think of anything else to tie it into it. Like, I'm not going to pick them to win the SEC or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go as far as to say I think Texas is a team that will be playing in the second weekend of the NCAA tournament next year.
No, I like that. That is definitely a bold prediction. Win a few games in March. I like that.
Arthur Kaluma may have been the missing piece because when I look at this potential starting lineup they have, I'm sold. Like, I really like, with him joining the mix, I really like Pope, Trey Johnson. I mean, Johnson, we know, one of the best freshmen out there. Jamon Mark, Kaluma. You've got Shedrick there. You got a little depth in the backcourt now, or in the front court, too. You got Jason Kent. We know he's joining the mix, too. Just saying.
And don't forget about Chendell Weaver. That guy is a workhorse. And it's funny, we were joking about this the other day. A few episodes ago, I make my bold prediction that Nick Cody, who right behind Jason Kent, if you want to put a depth chart out there, at the 4 for Texas, I said he's going to make the all-freshman team because they're going to need him to play. I think it was the next day Arthur Kaluma signed. So
that's okay. I mean, but still, I think Texas is it's hard to put anybody over Alabama, but I think in the right scenario, Texas is win the SEC good, potentially. But we'll see.
Well,
I
think one of the biggest pieces there that nobody's talking about is Trey Johnson is 6'6".
Yeah.
They are going to be tall.
Yeah.
So
got a lot of size, got some depth. So I like this Texas team. I'm curious to see what they do with this heading in the next season. But there you go. There are predictions, which I will be sure to write mine down because, as always, I don't know what all I've predicted. I got to keep up with it because now we're getting to that point. We've made so many predictions. I'm like, I got to remember I don't trip on another one I've already done. But there you go, guys. That was the SEC basketball experience. We hope you enjoyed it. As always, be sure to check out everything else we've got going on here at Southeastern 16. Check out all of our football preseason stuff there. You can check out a new baseball show we've added. So now we've got a weekly basketball, baseball, and football show. Here we got 2 football shows basically with Edwards and Greason as well from the Gambling Slant. So you can find all that here on the channel. So do us a favor, hit the subscribe button. If you want to support us, if you want to advertise, we were talking about Jersey Mike's earlier. We're not kidding. Like, we're looking for sponsors. So if you want to sponsor this show or any other shows we have here on the channel, be sure to reach out to caroline.smith@southeastern14.com. We know it still says Southeastern 14, but don't worry. Put it on that one. It'll get to the Southeastern 16 email. So just do that, and you can reach out and sponsor the show. So, all right, guys, we appreciate you watching or listening, as always, and we'll talk to you again here soon on the SEC Basketball Experience at Southeastern 16.